Hi, everybody. Pam Police here from the Dick Biondi documentary. And I'm here with my good buddy, Joe Farina, Director of Communications and Marketing for the Dick Biondi Film. And we have a very special guest tonight. We have the author of the book, The Chicago Music Scene, 1960s and 70s, Dean Milano. And Dean is also a working musician. He's been a very busy guy. And thanks for joining us.
Hey, what the heck? Most of us don't have much else to do, so.
Yeah, but I hear you had a gig today. Tell us
Yeah,
about it. Where were you?
I was at a senior home out in Batavia, and this is the second time I've done this now in the last few weeks. They have us play out on a parking lot or a patio, and all the guests either watch from their balconies or they come down and sit in seats around outside. We don't go inside. We don't get near anybody, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I played for about an hour, and they set me up on the back of a pickup truck. And after an hour, they moved me across their campus, as they call it, to a new location, and I played for another hour.
How cool is that?
That's great.
It was wonderful. And the residents were wonderful. They were applauding and yelling out requests and everything else, and it was really fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I love playing for the seniors. I mean, I do a lot of senior homes, and I always enjoy it because I get to play songs that I don't get to play in the bars and the restaurants and the clubs, because I can play stuff from the 20s and 30s and 40s, 50s and 60s. Or in the bars, you can't do 20s and 30s and 40s. Nobody wants to hear wonderful music, and nobody wants to hear it. So the seniors love it. That's their music.
True.
And it's my music. I'm a senior. I'm 69 years old. So that's my music.
We all are. Well, no, not we are. Joe's not. Joe's a youngster over here.
Yeah, right.
Dina,
you'll catch up to it someday, yeah.
Dean, I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit about your musical influences and when you got into music and when you started to play the guitar. When did that all start for you?
I started playing music back in like 1959 when my parents got me accordion lessons, because I lived in Milwaukee. And in Milwaukee, there was a law that you had to play the accordion or you'd be arrested. No kidding. On a Saturday morning, you'd walk down the street on a Saturday morning, and you could hear all the accordions coming out of all the houses, all the kids practicing their accordions. So we had a traveling salesman came to our door with accordions, and my parents bought one for me and my brother Paul, each of us. Wow. So I started out on the accordion, and I really loved it. I enjoyed it, and I found that I would, when I was not having to, practicing lessons, I would listen to the radio, and I would learn the pop songs on the radio on my accordion, and I could actually figure them out. I could figure the chords out by ear, which I thought was what everyone did, and found out years later, no, that was actually fairly unusual that I could do that, Yeah. So, here I'm supposed to be playing, Funicula, Funicula, and these Italian songs, and I'm playing, little rock and roll songs and stuff, my accordion. And then around 1966, I switched over to the bass guitar. And I started playing bass, and I got into a little band in 1966 in my neighborhood. And of course, back then, when you walked down the street on a Saturday morning, there was a band on every block playing in every garage. Oh. We were all garage bands.
Oh, those were the days.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And as soon as you started playing, all the kids in the neighborhood would come on their bikes, and you'd be surrounded by kids on their bikes cheering. And it was like a big concert, because you weren't good enough to play in clubs or anything yet, so those were your concerts. And then we would get our parents like Christmas lights and stuff, and we'd set them up in front of us, and to make it look like it was a concert, And it was so much fun. And the funny thing is, about years ago, my brothers and I were at my parents' house in Glen Ellen, and we thought, wouldn't it be cool? Let's set up in the garage again like we did when we were kids and play. So we set up all our equipment in my parents' garage on a Saturday morning, started playing. Not one person stopped by to listen. Not one. And I said, boy, times have really changed, haven't they? The excitement and the novelty.
Oh my God.
The novelty the novelty of a live music band in the early 60s, mid 60s was really heavy duty. And that had worn off eventually. And it wasn't so exciting to go and hear a little live band in a garage anymore as it was back in the early 60s. And that's what happened. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Things change, you know.
You know what? I was walking around my neighborhood a couple weeks ago, and it was one of the first nice days. And I started hearing, I was on the phone with my brother actually, and I started hearing this music. And I was like, oh my God. And this is like when we first started the shutdown. And I was like, you know, and I started hearing this music and I'm drawn to it. And I walk into this place, and these guys were actually performing in a garage.
Oh, really?
Weren't
Yeah.
really social distancing, I hate to tell you, but I was like, yes,
Yeah.
it's so cool to see a band playing together, you know?
That's right.
We've done it twice in our neighborhood here in the past 2 months. I have some musical neighbors who are wonderful, and we set up twice on the driveways in our neighborhood in Elmhurst and had 2 concerts. And we had about 40 people at each concert. All the neighbors come out with their chairs, lawn chairs, setting them up on their lawns. Everyone stays far enough from everybody else. And then one lady makes cookies and popcorn and passes them around to everybody.
Oh,
And we had a great time. It was really fun. People were just like, oh, this is so great to get out of our houses and to hear a live band. And, you know, so I hope we do it again, too. We've done it twice so far.
that's beautiful.
It's been fun. Really is fun, yeah.
It's really beautiful. Well, let's
Yeah.
talk about your book.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really something. How long did it take you to make this book, write this book?
It took me about a year. Full time, it took a year to write that book.
And what
A lot more
possessed
than I
you?
thought it was going to take. It's a lot of research, and you have to make sure you don't make any mistakes. You cannot make mistakes in a book like that. And I had to reference a lot of people who are in the different genres, because I have folk, rock, blues, country, jazz. So I had people who were experts in each of those fields, and I would send them what I had written, and I would say, okay, is this accurate? Have I gotten everything right here?
Mhm.
They'd look it over. They'd say, yep, this is fine. You can print that. And I'm okay, great. I want to make sure I got this right. And that's how I did it. And it was tough. It was a lot of research. And once the word got out of the street that I was doing this book, a lot of players actually came to my house with pictures of their old bands. I had Bruce Maddy from New Colony 6 came over here. Joe Kelly from Shadows of Night came over here. Quite a few of the guys actually came here to drop off pictures and then talk to me and give me, information I could use in the book. So that really helped a lot. And I've never really had a complaint on the book so far. And it sold a lot of copies. And it sells very well.
Believe it.
And if you look on the Amazon reviews, the reviews are kind of funny because a couple of people got on there and obviously they hadn't even read the book yet. All they read was the title, which is Chicago Music Scene of the 60s and 70s. And the one guy said, how dare you write a book about the Chicago music scene and not talk about all the suburban clubs and all the suburban bands? And I responded and said, you know what? Did you even read the book? There's all kinds of stuff on the suburban clubs and the suburban bands in there. So obviously you write your review, you complain, you hadn't even read the book. Other than that, the reviews have been really, really good. Yeah.
That's great.
It's a great book. I have a copy. And
That's great.
again, I noticed my book is not autographed. What is going on here?
Oh my God. How could that have happened?
I need
thought
an
I autographed
autograph.
every copy in the state.
Dan, what in your book you talk about the Chicago music scene of the 1960s and 1970s. What makes the Chicago music scene during that time so unique, so historical, and so special?
Well, it was a time, particularly in the mid-late 60s, when Chicago bands were taken pretty seriously. They really were. And it's mainly in the rock and roll, arena. The Buckinghams in Billboard magazine were called the most listened to band in America. The Buckinghams, a band from the Chicago suburbs. You listen to stuff like that. We had New Colony 6 had some top hits in the top 40 across the nation, not just Chicago. There you go. So we had bands like that, the Shadows of Night, New Colony 6. We had Ides of March, Cryan Shames, the Mods, the Flock. These bands had hit records that were on the top 40. It lasted until the late 60s. And then it changed. There's a Cryan Shames, yeah. And my band opened for all these guys back then. I had a band called Grope, which still plays. My band Grope still plays to this day.
Amazing.
Fantastic band. We still play, and we opened for all those bands in those days. And I'll tell you, it was a kid's dream come true. It really was. We had so much fun. So the scene was very vibrant at that time. I think what happened, and there are people who don't agree with me, and they don't like what I have to say about this, but I think it's true. Chicago music was pop-oriented. I don't want to call it bubblegum, because it wasn't bubblegum, but it was pop-oriented, okay? It was really nice tunes, well-written pop music. Now what's happening? I'm sorry?
It was kind of uplifting music, wasn't it?
It was uplifting. A lot of it was sweet. It was beautiful stuff, a lot of harmonies.
Yeah.
The horn bands came along. What happened, in my opinion, was all of a sudden on the East and West Coasts, you had some big changes taking place. You had bands like the Doors, the Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, bands that were really cutting edge. Jimi Hendrix comes along. The Chicago bands didn't quite keep up with what was happening in the rest of the world music scene, and they got left behind. And the music changed quite a bit in the late '60s, and Chicago's bands kind of faded away. And I think that's what happened. And again, people aren't going to agree. All you have to do is look at the top 40 charts, and you'll see that the Chicago groups disappeared. Now, the band Chicago, CTA, they continued with hit records, but of course they moved out to Los Angeles right away. They weren't in Chicago anymore. They were gone, So the bands that stayed here and tried to keep going, there's Chicago right there on the bottom. That's a long story right there. Getting that picture. Getting that picture was a job in itself, because I contacted the management team of the band Chicago out in LA. And I said, okay, guys, I'm writing a book on the Chicago music in the 60s and 70s, and I want to include Chicago in my book. All I have, so far is nothing. Could you please send me some nice photographs of the band from the early days in Chicago and a bio of the band? And on the phone, a woman says, we're too busy for this kind of thing. I'm sorry, we don't have time for this kind of stuff. And I said, well, okay, in that case, I've got an old blurry Polaroid photograph of the band, and that's all I've got. That's going to go in this book, and that's going to be representation of the band in my book. Well, within about a week, huge package arrives on my doorstep. Big folder filled with wonderful photos and bio and the whole history of the band. So I don't know what changed their mind, but luckily,
wow.
Yeah. It was interesting because in the beginning, when the book was just getting off the ground, I had a hard time getting responses from people, because they were like, who's this guy doing this book, and who cares, But as the word got on the street and people started discovering what I was doing, I got much more reception from people, particularly in the jazz field. Now, in jazz, my uncle Conti Milano was a very famous jazz bass player in Chicago. He played with Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, Max Roach. He played with all these guys, very famous jazz player. Well, when I would call up these jazz players, these old guys, and I'd say, I'm writing this book on the Chicago jazz scene, they'd say, oh yeah, who's this guy? I'd say, my name is Dean Milano, Conti Milano's nephew. They go, oh my God, you're Conti Milano's nephew? Yeah. Oh my God. And then all of a sudden, bam, they just opened up. And it was like, you're part of the family, buddy. So that really helped me.
Very cool.
That's awesome. And Dean, is it fair to say, kind of going back to the Buckinghams and then the band Chicago, is it fair to say that Chicago kind of continued, because I think the Buckinghams set that tone and that unique sound with the horn sections and so forth. Is it fair enough to say that Chicago took that inspiration or what have you and to a whole new level? Would that sound pretty accurate?
Yeah, I would say they did. Yeah. And Jim Peter with the Ides of March with the horns that he used. And there was a band called The Mob in Chicago that had a whole horn section to it. And that became the Chicago sound. That horn sound was the Chicago sound. And and I would say that where the other bands kind of faded away. Of course, Peter went on to, form Survivor after that. But those original bands faded away, and Chicago continued that horn sound out in LA. And to tell you the truth, I haven't followed Chicago, so I don't know what they're doing now. I know they got kind of a little more sweet than they were originally, because they were cutting edge at the beginning.
Oh, yes.
They were. And I think they got sweet after a while. And it's good music. It's still very good music, but it's not quite cutting edge the way it was originally. But yeah, I think the bands like the Buckinghams and those bands, they did a lot of influence there. There really was.
And they're still performing.
Yeah.
And they're all in the Dick Biondi film.
Right,
Yes.
they are. And I think there was an era there where those bands kind of disappeared and people lost interest in those bands. And if you look at, say, the late 70s, maybe early 80s, I don't think people were interested. And then all of a sudden, you had this nostalgia craze that came along, and all of a sudden, everybody wanted to hear the Buckinghams again, and the Shadows of Night, and the Cryan Shames, and all those bands. And they got on the festival circuit, and now they're all working again, which is wonderful.
And now they're doing the big Cornerstone show at the Arcata Theater with Ryan Westy.
Right.
I mean, he's got them out there twice a year, and they sell out every single show. It's unbelievable.
People finally got to the point
They love
where they
it.
said, whatever happened to the Buckinghams and all that great music? What happened to that? We want to hear it again. And here they are, folks. They're back again. So,
Isn't that something?
Wonderful. And Dean, how did Dick Biondi play a crucial role in the rock music scene, the Chicago rock music scene, starting in the 1960s when he came to Chicago and started at WLS? Can you talk about that a little bit?
A little bit. So, of course, I was in Milwaukee, and I didn't get here until 64. So I missed the early 60s in Chicago here. But I know what was happening was, and I think people corroborate this, was that the DJs had so much more freedom in those days to play songs they would like to play on their show, which you cannot do today.
No.
Absolutely impossible. So Biondi and Clark Weber and people like that would play songs by local bands and say, we want to promote your band. We're going to play your record on my show here. And it got those bands off the ground. It was a wonderful way to do it. And of course, it can't be done anymore. So that's the important thing that.
And you know what the cool thing was about WLS? It was 50,000 watts, and it went all across the country, it went all the way to California. So the Buckinghams in our movie, they talk about how, Dick put their song on the radio at night when that thing was wide open. They had a national hit. It was,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it never happened again after that. And who knows if it will. The corporations took over pop radio, and they did it the way they wanted to, and nobody had any say anymore. So,
but it's true. Dick Biondi had such a big influence on bands, local bands. If he played your record, odds are it was gonna be a hit. He had a unique ear that it was really, really something special. And if he heard something that he liked, he was going to promote it. He was going to play it. And, he was the first, for example, when he played the first Beatles record in 1963, that was a unique sound for that time. And Dick said, wow, there's something different here. There's something here that I really like. And I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it on my show on WLS in 63. So Dick really had that influence, that impact on all of those bands. It's pretty amazing.
Well, Frankie Valli said we interviewed Frankie Valli for the film, and he said Dick had a good ear. I mean, he heard something. He really knew what he was listening to. He could pick a hit.
Yeah, those DJs, they knew what the kids wanted to hear. I mean, they did the sock hops and all those things, and we saw those DJs at all the sock hops we went to as kids, and they had their finger on the pulse of what the kids wanted to hear. So they'd hear it. Dick would hear something like the Beatles and said, "This is the kind of thing the kids are going to want to hear." Now today he could never do that in a million years. No station would allow him to play a record like that the way he did. So it was. Why couldn't we get back to that of a time? I don't know.
Very special time. Well, you know what? Our time is running out. This has really been fun, but we want to make an announcement. Joe, would you like to do the announcement? We have
sure, absolutely. Yes,
fun.
yes. What we're doing here, if you go to our Facebook page, we just put an announcement up there within the hour. Subscribers to our newsletter will have the opportunity to win a Dick Biondi t-shirt and mug.
Woo.
We will be selecting winners at random starting next week on our Zoom chat shows like we're doing right now. So it's a great way, fun way to be a part of this very, very special film. You can, you know, it's really, really fun. And so check it out.
And how do you get to do that, Joe? How do you
What's
get to
that?
enter? How do you enter?
Well, if you go to our website, dickbiondifilm.com, there's a section on there that says contact. And what you do is you fill out the information on there and you'll be subscribing to our newsletter and you'll be automatically entered into the contest, and the random winner will be selected. Our first random winner will be selected starting next week. How cool is that, folks?
And when we have our next fundraiser, you can wear your shirt and bring your mug, and we can celebrate together.
I'll have to lose some weight so my shirt doesn't look ridiculous.
I know we're all sitting around eating and
I know. I have a 1-minute song for if you want.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, let's do it.
This is a song from one of my CDs. I wrote this dedicated to all my musician friends.
Oh,
And musicians understand what this is about, okay? It's called The Folk Singer's Dream. Last night I had the strangest dream I'd never had before. I dreamed I played my folk songs at the open mic next door. The audience, it numbered 5. I knew them every one, quietly tuning their instruments, waiting till I was done. Then to our amazement, by the door did stand a young man who was neatly dressed with no guitar in hand. We welcomed him to our music fest. We all made such a fuss. It's seldom that we play for one who's not a folkie like us. It's
Yay.
true, kind sir, he said to me, I am no troubadour. I just came in to get change for the meters, and then he was out the door.
Very good. Bravo.
you have a
Bravo.
good voice, Dean. I really like your
Thank
voice.
you. Thank you.
What key is that in?
A minor.
Okay, I thought I heard an A minor there.
That's an
Okay.
A minor.
All right.
This has been fun. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, you guys. And to
That's
everybody who's watching, we hope you're staying safe and you're
Yeah.
still doing your social distancing. I know it's getting old, but we're still here and we got
Still
to
alive.
be careful. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
as long as
Thank
we're
you.
all safe and we're still here together, we can continue and keep sharing all this love and all this great music. And
I can't wait till the film comes out.
thank you. Me
Thank you
neither.
so
We're
much.
working on it as we speak. We're still working
Cool.
on it. Yeah.
DickBeyondFilm.com. Please like our
Yeah.
Facebook page and join our Facebook group.
And
It's
win your
growing
shirt
and
mug.
growing and growing each day. A lot of fun stuff on there. So come join the Dick Biondi Film team. Let's go, folks.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you later.
Oh my goodness.
Oh no.
I'm running out. Oop.
How do we get out of
I
here?
hit the upgrade button.
Oh no.
Oh no.
We'll never escape.
Oh, is that all it is? 12:49? What the heck? I might as well get it. But I got to go back. I've lost you. Hold on. Where are
I'm here.
I'm here. I still see you.
We're
I
still
don't
here.
see you.
Yeah. You don't see us.
I don't see you. I can't
Uh-oh.
see you.
We
Okay,
see
hold on.
you.
Oh, this is crazy. Well, I can edit it. Thank God. Hold
Yeah.
on. Where is it? Good grief.
We love watching Pam
There
suffer
it
here.
is. Okay, you know what? Did I record this?
Uh-oh.